My dear young lady, if you don't want to have a boss or if you don't want to have a master, then don't marry. Okay, marriage is not compulsory. You can decide to marry or you can decide not to marry. But if you don't want to have a boss, then my dear, stay in your singleness and enjoy it. There is nothing wrong with you if you decide not to marry, because you are not ready to submit. You are not ready to honor. You are not ready to respect a man. Because you can suggest to him, but it is up to him to take it or not. So if you don't want to have a boss, if you don't want to have a master, then don't marry. In God's kingdom, okay, there is orderliness. God is the God of order. He's not a God of confusion or everything is said basa basa. In God's kingdom, there is order. God has set boundaries. So the man has a responsibility and you also have your responsibility. Jesus Christ is the head of the man and the man is the head of the woman. And the Bible commands you to respect and honor your husband. So if you're not ready to have a boss, if you're not ready to have a master, if you want to do your own thing, come home, do whatever that you want to do, then my dear, don't bother yourself to get into the institution of marriage. Because when you get there, the laws, the commands, the statutes, everything, it applies to you. So you have to abide by it. Because the creator of marriage, he is wise. And he knows that this is how things must be. So maybe when you assess yourself, you are a woman who has a strong will and you want to do your own thing. You don't want to submit to anybody. You don't want to honor anybody. So then you say, well, I'm not ready to get into this institution, because if I get there, then whether I like it or not, I have to submit. I have to honor. The man will be my head, and I don't want anybody to be my head. I don't want anybody to be my leader. I want to be my own boss. I want to be my own master. That is why it's important and critical that if you are a young lady and you want to get married, you are marrying the head. You are marrying the man's mind. So you have to be very careful. You cannot just jump on and then accept any man. If you cannot submit to him, don't marry him. If you cannot respect him and honor him, the guy that you are in a relationship with, the guy that you are dating, if you cannot submit to him, if you cannot respect him, then my dear, don't bother. Don't get married. Don't go and put yourself under a curse, because you know that you are not ready to do what God wants you to do. As I said, the creator of marriage is wise and he has set boundaries. So if you want to get into that institution, then you have to abide by the principles and the patterns in that marriage. So my dear, that is my advice for you. You don't need a boss. You don't need a leader. You don't need anybody to lead for you to follow. You don't need anybody to submit to. Then forget about marriage and then stay in your singleness and enjoy. Nobody would come and tell you to do this or that. Or maybe you decide to go somewhere and then your husband said, no, I want you to stay because there is something I want you to do for me. And you have to say, yes, sir, I will do it for you. So if you're not ready to do that, then don't bother. Don't get into the institution of marriage, so that you can have your freedom to do whatever that you want to do, because marriage is not compulsory. God didn't create us to marry. He created us to manage his resources, to dominate. So marriage is optional. It is not by force. Anybody who tells you that it is by force, you have to marry, it is not true. It is not biblical. You can decide not to marry. But if you want to marry, then you have to understand what this institution is all about, the principles and the patterns, the authority that God has given to each and every one of everyone in the marriage, so that if you are able to abide by it and you honor God in the marriage, then God can also honor you. God will bless you because you did it, because he has commanded you to do so. And when you do your part, the blessings of God will follow you, because those who honor God, God will surely honor them. So as I said, before you marry any man, make sure that you trust his head, you trust his mind, you trust his leadership, you trust that he can handle things, you trust that he can manage you, he can lead you, he can go where God wants him to go. He submits to God. If that man doesn't submit his head to God, it will be very difficult for him to submit, or for him to do what God wants him to do, by leading you in the right direction, leading you spiritually, leading you mentally. So it's very, very important that you take note of it. If you don't trust his head, if you don't trust his mind, then don't go and marry that man, because you cannot submit to a head that is empty. You need a head that is full of wisdom, that submits to Christ. If the man submits to Christ, then that man can also do and lead you into your destiny.